One of the many magical things about the place where we live here in Thetford, Vermont, is that we have fields that act as woodcock singing grounds. Some people call them woodcock dancing grounds. Whether you call it one or the other depends on whether you're thinking about what the male birds are doing on the ground versus what they're doing in the air. It goes like this. The male woodcock shows up in a special field that has certain features, primarily among them a bunch of female woodcocks looking to build nests nearby. The action starts when the light gets low. A male flies to the edge of the field and starts calling a raspy peent over and over again, often rotating around between each call for maximum effect. So this is the bird that we call Slim, the male who started calling just about when it was dark enough to not be able to take pictures. But tonight we're lucky. After the bird started calling, a cloud passed between the western horizon and this field. It acted like a reflector to the setting sun, which was already below the horizon. He makes a series of peent calls. A careful listener will also be able to hear competing callers in the background and occasionally a wild turkey calling up from that roost. If you get close enough, you can hear a two-note call that usually precedes each peent. It sounds like a tiny bird wheezing in and out. He'll call perhaps a dozen times, rotating around to maximize this advertising. He'll then take off, making a rapid, beating whistle noise, actually made by his wings. It sounds a bit like the noise from the cartoon in the Jetsons with those little space cars. This flight will last about 90 seconds most times. The exceptions are when there are other males competing on the grounds, or especially when a female shows up. Then all bets are off. Just before landing, the male, now up 100 or 300 feet in the air, will make the twip-twip call, a whimsical sounding two-note sing-song that will last maybe 10 seconds. If an observer wants to get close to the bird, they can move closer to the calling site while the bird's still in the air and still making noise. Once that bird goes silent at the end of the twip-twip, they need to freeze, lest they scare the bird away. Observers have to stand, or better still sit in the brush along the side of the field, not talk and not move. While watching this little peent session, things got dramatic. Slim and I both saw a female come from the north. She flew and landed about 20 yards away. Slim first crouches down, as though in alarm about to fly. But quickly he stands back up, turns and looks. She faces away from him, toward the edge of the hedgerow, over by the edge of the field, but watches him intently over her shoulder. Woodcock are shaped in a pretty odd fashion. Their heads are on somewhat upside down. Their eyes are on top, like those of an insect. It allows them to see about 270 degrees when their beaks are deep in the ground grabbing earthworms. When they're looking up, like now, they have roughly 360 degrees coverage. I don't at first pan to the female for fear of making motion, which could ruin this moment. Slim is moving closer. Each time you see those little shrugs of his shoulders, he's making that pre-pink breathing two-note call. I've put 2 sets of microphones out in the middle of the field to get better audio recordings. They're not close enough right now to pick up those secondary calls. The background noise you hear is the rushing of the west branch of the Pompanousett River. That's just about 150 yards from the edge of the field. She hasn't moved, but she's turning her head to eye him as he approaches. He moves toward her a few steps at a time. When close enough for her to see, he'll do his little stiff walk, pointing wings down and seeming to walk with straightened legs. But rather than make his move this early in the evening, he wants to show off a bit first. He takes off for a dance flight. You can see his shadow flit from right to left as he grabs her attention. Those are the beat calls of his wings. He's now rising in the spiral pattern above the field. Her head moves, keeping track with him the whole time. He's looking for his landing spot. You need to be perfectly still. You hear his wings beat to decelerate. But there's something he doesn't like here. It might be the presence of that other male. He takes off again in mid-peent, and she follows, her flight path on a rough intercept course. Perhaps this was what he was hoping for all along. You hear him start to twip early. Here he comes. He lands again, this time even closer to the microphone. There it is, there he is. This is the full-throated peent of a male, along with the accompanying double, wheezy call. I don't know where she is, but he might. His painting sessions are now unusually short, not the sort of thing we see on those nights when the female doesn't appear. That's most nights. After it got too dark to film, Slim walked off with the female into the hedgy corner of the field. His calls changed, as he made pew calls that sounded a little squelched. In the past, observing this from a blind, we've seen those sounds being made while males were doing the stiff walk associated with a successful pairing with a female. The female shown in the video will spend the next few days laying a clutch of about 4 eggs, mating prior to each. The male will likely stay with that female for that time, returning to the singing ground only after she's completed the clutch. In fact, this bird in the video isn't the same male that was calling at the same location a few days ago. That original bird, the fat one we call Bert, is likely off with a different female, or perhaps in the tummy of a nearby fox, one of those occupational hazards that happens when you do a sky dance, returning to the same place 10 or 20 times in a night. This new male, the one we call Slim, is pretty skinny relative to the others we've seen, and it could be a yearling. The males often don't mate that first year. The females usually do, but the males may wait for more than a year before becoming sexually active. There are certain qualities to a field that makes it a good singing ground. One is it has to be in a place geographically where the calling can reach a large area. One is it has to have the right combination of habitats, usually short enough grass to stand in and move around in for the male in a field. Also, hedgerows on the outside of a field that have the right sort of brush, not too much so that she can't move on the ground, but not so little that you're just easy pickings for the local owls.